Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast. Each week, your host, Casey Hasten, Director of Recruiting at VIP, will bring you valuable insights from thought leaders, introduce you to incredible companies, and bring you tips for landing your dream job from our team of executive recruiters at VIP. And now, Casey Hasten.
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast, a podcast devoted to adding value to your career or candidate search, brought to you by VIP. I'm your host, Casey Hasten. I'm an executive recruiter, director of recruiting with VIP, and your all-around hiring guru. And it is my absolute passion in life to make sure that you are aligned with your passions in your career. And so in order to do that, it's important that you know how to negotiate for yourself and to, make certain moves, but stand up. And so today, our guest is going to talk to us about the art of negotiation. So Chase McTaggart, the founder of Quiet Man Negotiations, is here with us today. Chase is an expert in micro and macro negotiations, and he has a passion for promoting non-aggressive negotiating strategies and equips clients and their teams with the confidence and tools they need in order to deliver an intentional, lucrative agreements. Thanks for joining us today, Chase.
Thanks for having me, Casey.
Sometimes we have to deal with technical difficulties.
Yeah, lots.
I know.
I do.
And sometimes you just roll with it, like we just did then. Unfortunately, I have this nice little teleprompter so that I can read your intro with such ease and grace, and then sometimes it just doesn't work.
It happens.
I need to really figure out how to get that remote thing to work that we talked about before the show. So welcome to the show, Chase.
Thanks.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so Chase McTaggart, Quiet Man Negotiations. I specialize predominantly in women's negotiations, of all things. Surprising, isn't that?
That is a little surprising. How did that happen?
So I was doing a lot of lunch and learns, a lot of teaching, and a lot of conversations with women. But the lunch and learns were, they were mixed gender. And what I found was that men in particular would just kind of golf clap, and they would get up and leave. That just seemed to be what was happening. The women would come up to me afterwards and they would say, "Hey, how do I retain you? How do I start having a real conversation with you about training with my team or teaching me or coaching me one-on-one for the things that I'm going through?" I read somewhere, and this is not a scientific journal, bear with me here, but that men will move forward with something like 60% of the information, and women will move forward with like 90 to 93% of the information.
I think I've read that same statistic.
Yeah, and so just the interest in getting more information and more coaching, and women have different roadblocks.
And they absolutely do, and I'm glad you brought that up, and it's interesting. Question though, do you ever have those roadblocks when you're trying to approach women, or do you wait for them to approach you in the lunch and learns? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so usually in the lunch and learn, I will get up and do the thing, right? The lunch and learn, the teaching. And then afterward, I'm just kind of very cordial and hanging around, and they approach me normally.
Gotcha.
We're quiet men, right? We're not very pushy. We're not salesy. If you're interested, great. If you're not interested, great. That's okay too.
I think that's one thing I really enjoyed about our first conversation, because, I've talked to different people that do negotiations, and I think we talked about, Chris Voss, for example. That's a very different type of negotiating style than what you use.
Yep, it is.
And so how would those two differ?
So one of them is my opinion, and I tell people this all the time because that's the first thing people ask me is about Chris Voss and his book.
And it's a great book. Don't split the difference.
For sure. And there's a lot of great stuff in there. I tell people all the time, if I am ever taken hostage, please call Chris.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't call me. I don't want a long-term relationship with this person, right? It's a ongoing business relationship. I think Chris deals with a different clientele.
That's a really good difference.
Than I do. I deal with primarily actually entirely business people, not people who are generally robbing a bank or taking hostages. And so there's a few things that are big and different in those things.
That's a very interesting difference, and I think that I know one of the things I struggle with personally as a woman is to have those conversations about pay raise.
Yeah, for sure.
And and I think that I will struggle with that for weeks and weeks and maybe months before I will actually if ever, approach that conversation. And so, but I don't think men do the same thing. I mean, I could be wrong, but
no, men tend to take swings a lot more than women in that regard. And so women are, and this one is scientific articles, scientifically proven. Women are more likely to accept a lower offer. They're also more likely to give a lower offer 9 times out of 10. And so they're setting themselves up for failure in a lot of ways.
Oh, that's so interesting. Because that just reminds me of a client that I worked with that, like, no matter how many times I told them you're below market average and you're expecting a Picasso, you know, they just wouldn't come up on the salary. They're like, no, that's what we're going to pay. This is what they're worth to us. And I'm like, yep.
Yeah. And on that, what I see is a lot of rationalization of like, this is what they're worth to us rather than this is what I want. Those are two different things.
Exactly.
And so if they can't rationalize in their mind their own value to the company, you will generally ask for what they can rationalize in their own mind that they are worth.
Interesting.
Yeah. And also they ask. There's books out there about asking rather than telling. Make a decision and tell. Hey, I'm willing to do this, but this is what it's going to cost. What are your thoughts? Right? How do you think about it? As opposed to, hey, can I please have? I would like to have that kind of thing.
Oh, you're giving me some really good ideas already. So I know, and what were you doing before you started Quiet Man Negotiations?
Yeah, so how far back you want me to go?
As much as relative?
Well, I was born, no, I'm kidding. So I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. That's my love. And then I fell into business and loved that, and the two got married together, basically. And so I was running a high purity, a manufacturing company at one point. And in doing that, I found out that I wasn't really good at negotiation. So I went and trained at under the best systems and top negotiators, in my opinion, in the world.
Okay.
And in doing that, I learned a bunch of really good skills and also found out that this is a passion of mine. Helping people punch bullies in the nose is something I love to do. And teaching and training. And I always knew that I loved the psychology research portion. And I actually, for a while, I wasn't an LPC, so it's not technically counseling, but I was counseling kids in a child and adolescent program right when I came out of school in the clinical setting. And I am not built for that under any circumstances. So I pulled back from that, but I knew I loved the research. And so now I get to research and teach on business negotiations, and I love it. Love it.
So what would be like maybe 3 of the bullet points that you would give in a lunch and learn for a company?
Ooh, let's see. So one of them will be, well, we're going to talk about it, but micro negotiations and how important those are. Do you want me to go into that?
Yeah, let's talk. Well, so you talk about micro and master macro negotiations. So what are the difference between the two first?
Yeah, so there's micro negotiations. These are the individual exchanges that you have at any given time. And so you're having a coffee with someone, you're having a conversation. We're exchanging information right now, like as in real time, right? I'm telling you things that are important to me. I'm telling you things that aren't important to me. And the brain is a beautiful thing. It's constantly recording what's going on. It's incredible.
It's so incredible.
Absolutely fascinating. But it's constantly recording what's going on. And then at a later date, it goes through the files and pulls out things that it believes are going to be opportunistic, that it can use at that time, right, for the micro or for the bigger negotiation. So you have negotiations. That's two or more people navigating a particular topic. So buying widgets, right, for this time, delivery, all that stuff. And then the micros are all the little coffees and rescheduling of appointments and stuff that happen. And those alter the trajectory of the actual negotiation itself.
Okay.
Then you have macro negotiations. If you've done 4 annual contracts and you're working on the 5th, the person that's sitting across from you is not going to deal with you the same way on that 5th one as they would have on the first one, because they have 4 extra years of data to pull from and to think about. If you've been a pushover for those first 4 years, they're going to deal with you like you're a pushover in year 5. That's the macro. It's the lens through which the other party perceives you, your wants, your needs, those kinds of things.
Interesting. Okay, so we were talking about a situation that I have going on, or that I have had going on in the past, that was one of those that was kind of sensitive, and I'm trying to think of the micro versus the macro of this, because, like, you know, a situation happened where authorities being challenged And now that you have said it like that, I'm looking back over the years where perhaps that person has been allowed to challenge that authority.
Yeah, so in something like that, you want me to comment on that?
Yes, I would love for you to comment on that.
All right, that's permission. So in something like that, what I would do if it were me is I would run to the problem and say like, hey, I haven't done a good job doing this. I haven't done a good job doing this and holding you accountable to these things and doing these things. I've said these things in the past and I haven't held you accountable to them. So instead, that's my fault. But starting now, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to do this. And if this happens, this is what happens as well. And then reset those expectations really, really clearly.
That's really good.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm going to use that for sure.
I think I picked that up from, there's a book out there called Start With No by Jim Camp. And that's my number one recommendation, by the way, for anybody who's interested in it. Start With No by Jim Camp.
I have not heard of that book before.
Chris Voss's book tops the charts. Everybody knows it. It's fascinating because he's got all these incredible stories. Start With No is the one I send everybody to. It's easier to read the words in my copy that are not highlighted. It's dipped in highlighter.
Do you use different color highlighters when you highlight?
Ooh, no, but I use tabs too.
I use tabs.
Yeah.
I'm a big tabber
me
highlighter,
too.
and I also have a pen
Oh, I do that sometimes.
to write in the margins. Yeah. So, yeah. We probably don't want to exchange each other's books. No. It could be. You would learn too much about me. I think so. One of the interesting things that I'm doing right now that I think you'll appreciate, being psychology being one of your first loves, is I'm actually enrolled to get my certification in neurolinguistic programming.
That's a lot of big words.
It is.
That sounds amazing, though.
It is. And it's all about building the neuroplasticity of your brain.
Yeah.
And building new neural pathways. That it's actually, and I'm sure it's been proven. I haven't read the studies on it yet, but they say that it helps prevent dementia and Alzheimer's because you're triggering all those neurons.
Yeah.
And so I'm about a month in, and I am just obsessed.
That's really, really neat stuff. That stuff fascinates me to no end.
It is so crazy. And here's one thing I learned, and I don't know if you know this. Okay, have you ever heard, like if somebody's looking up while they're talking to you, that they're lying to you?
I've heard that, yeah.
Okay, it's a complete myth.
Yeah.
It's a complete
I'm
myth.
glad you said that because I was like, I don't believe that.
No, it's okay. So I'm just real quick lesson, and then we'll come back to you. But this is really fascinating. I just learned this. So, and I hope I get it right. But it's called eye accessing cues. Okay.
Okay.
So if you're visual, you're going to look up to the right or the left. Yeah. If you're not if you're visual, not if that's your primary learning, but like if you're seeing something in your mind, you're going to look up to the right or the left. If I'm looking at you and you're looking to my right, that you're remembering something that you actually saw. Okay. But if I'm looking at you and you're looking up to my left, you're imagining.
Huh.
And people, that's why they say when you look up, you're lying, but you're using your imagination. You could be lying. I'm not saying you're not.
Sure.
But you're mainly using your imagination.
Yeah. People use their imaginations to lie, I assume.
Well, I think you kind of have to, but that doesn't mean you're always lying just because you look up and to the left.
Fascinating.
And I'm visual. And for so long, I would not let myself look up when I was trying to remember things or recreate things because I didn't want people to think I was lying, even if I wasn't,
Yeah.
But if you look to the right or the left sideways, it's auditory.
That's fascinating.
Isn't that cool?
We need to talk more.
Okay, we'll talk more about that in a minute. So let's talk about this. Quiet Man Negotiations teaches clients how to remain relaxed and unfaltering, which I need a lot of, while negotiating for what they want. So how do you help someone who may struggle with advocating for themselves?
Yeah, so the biggest one, and I think we're going to talk about in a minute too, is preparation. That's the single biggest one. A buddy of mine, and I don't know that he's the first one to say this, I don't know that he is, but made the comment that if you, in the lack of a plan or in the absence of a plan, that's where fear prevails. And so if you've got a plan and you can run to it, number one, pre-address, and again, this is a campism from Jim Camp's book, but pre-address your emotions, get out in front of them and know what you're dealing with. You were talking about journals and stuff earlier with me, and get out in front of them earlier and pre-address them. Know what you're going through, number one. and then tie it to what it's tied to, so that you can at least see and get an accurate picture of the landscape of what you're walking into. And most people spend 15 minutes preparing beforehand.
Yep.
Right? Instead of an hour or some length of time that it really takes. Prep for it, get ready, do your if-thens. If they say this, then I do this, right? Those kinds of things. And then you've got a plan, and it really helps you advocate for yourself. The other one is data, and that's part of the prep. For instance, we were talking about what you're worth, salary-wise.
Yeah.
Do the prep work, do the homework. Those are the big things.
I think that is so important, and but this is another NLP thing, because they talk about getting ahead of the trigger, which is the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can step outside of that and get in front of that emotion that's going to trigger whatever response that you may have, because I know I've gone into, I have to go in and do my goals meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and why should I be like that? There's no reason. I'm like borrowing with fear.
Yeah, there's another way to do it too, and it's to recognize that the counterparty is using a playbook. Right.
Yeah.
And they're either using a tactical playbook that they've trained or developed on. They know what they're doing, and it's pointed, it's intentional. Right. Those are really high-end purchasing people. People who are trained in this stuff, manipulation, emotional stuff, or they're using a playground playbook where they've been doing the same thing since they were 5 years old. Right. And so either way, they're running a playbook. It's what they know how to do, and that helps dissociate the emotion from it.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's not a game, because I hate to use that phrase, but it's turn-based strategy, essentially. You're doing what you know how to do. I'm doing what I know how to do. And that makes it a little bit easier to dissociate the emotion.
Yeah, and still, it's hard sometimes, and so it's going to take some practice. It's not like the first time you go into that negotiation, it's going to be like, well, this is what Chase said, so this is going to be easy. I mean, you really do have to practice at it.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Don't call in a crisis. Prep beforehand.
Yes.
Right? Do it on the little ones, the smaller deals. Get some training under your belt, and that way you feel much more comfortable when the fire actually hits and everything is just hitting the fan. Then you're prepped, and you've got some really good basic foundation stuff that you can work from.
And so and I know we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but what truly makes you the quiet man?
Well, so the quiet man's a couple of things. One of them is, well, you can hear my tone, you can hear my voice, right? It's low. Chris Voss talks about this, his late night FM DJ voice. That's what he talks about. It's one of the great things about his book. It's very, very effective. If I sit here and I talk with you in a method like this or in a manner like this, it's soothing. We're having a good kind of calm, quiet conversation. That's very good. And it's not an aggressive style. It's very decision-based. It's very turn-based. I'm going to make a decision, and then you get to make a decision. And you get to make that decision.
Yep.
And I'm not going to push and pressure and attack you for things that you make a decision on. That's okay. You get to make that decision. And so that's part of the quiet man thing.
Oh, you just gave me another idea. Thank you.
Okay.
You are really, really helping me. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in synchronicities, and I believe this conversation was supposed to happen right now.
Okay.
This is perfect. This is perfect. So, all right, we talked about being nervous, and you gave a few tips, but what are some other tips you might have for people to help them to calm their nerves when they're in the middle of the conversation?
Yeah, so the prep work is huge.
Yep.
It really, really is. There's a couple things you can do. One, I have sat down and literally drawn a picture of a cat before. Hold on, bear with me. If you're on a Zoom call, for instance,
yes,
right, and you need a second to think, take notes. Or actually take notes.
Mm-hmm.
It gives a couple of seconds for you to process and think about something. Maybe do what's called mirroring back. Both Chris Voss and Jim Camp talk about this in their books. Hey, I can't do that on Thursday. On Thursday? That's a mirroring back. Now I'm getting more information from you, and I've bought myself a little bit of time to kind of decompress and calm down a little bit. But, sit there and take notes. Really? Okay. Right. You're still, I call them continuators, which is a made-up word, but but you're still talking, right? And I'm still getting information, and that makes me feel more comfortable too.
Okay. And you know what? And something else that I meant to bring up just a second ago when you were talking about the quiet man, okay? Yeah. And this is something that I have heard many times. Let's say that you're in the negotiations and it escalates on the other person's side. Mm-hmm. And I have learned that the louder you get, the quieter I get.
So there's actually some interesting stuff there. I call
Okay.
it controlling the emotional temperature of the room. So you've got a couple of different things. The first one is, let's say we both start off at baseline, and then you go up because you want to appear more dominant and you want to deal with me slightly differently. And so you go up 1.
Okay.
And then I go up 1. This is different than what you were talking about. I go up 1. Well, then you go up 2 to 2, or you go up to 3 or something like that. You want to maintain that level of dominance. On the same note, if you go up 1 and I go down 1, I've just rewarded your bad behavior. Right now I've become more submissive, a little bit more mousy. I've rewarded your bad behavior. And so when you're not getting what you want as this party, what do? You take it up 1 more notch, right? Because the first one worked so well. You want to get more submissive. The trick to that is staying on baseline at all times. So if you stay baseline and they go up to a 1 and you stay baseline, they may hover at a 1. That'd be cool. They may try to go to a 2. No big deal. But if they go to a 3, they're going to appear very unreasonable. And it can be a playbook. This is a playbook thing that typically trained people do in this. But they can go up to a 3. They feel really unreasonable, and then they come back down. Stay at baseline. That's all you got to do.
Okay.
Yep.
That's again, I can think of so many situations where this is going to work. This is working out really well for me today. So what are the next steps in your mission for the Quiet Man negotiations? Any big projects coming up or anything you want to talk to us about?
Yeah, I've got a couple. So the first one is women's only groups. I'm starting to do those. And I'm I'm doing specifically for industry. So I'm going to have 4 to 6 women. They're going to be small training groups, 10 to 15 minutes of educational component, followed by about 45 minutes of working on real nitty-gritty micro-negotiation stuff, because that's the foundation for everything. So how do I have this coffee? Hey, this employee is acting badly. How do I deal with this? I need to reschedule this appointment, but here's the situation. How do I do it? Let's write the email. Let's actually have the conversation. Let's do the if-thens and get down in the nitty-gritty, because on working on real deals, that's where the retention is. That's where people pick up on it, and there's real stakes involved. We don't play poker for no money.
Right. I lose all my money when I play poker.
When you do that, if you play poker for no money, everybody goes all in on a pair of 2s. It's not the same as human behavior in a real life scenario where there's stuff at stake.
Yes.
So that's one. The second one is online courses. I just started doing some recording for online courses, and I'm going to do them by subject matter. So there's going to be an anti-ghosting protocol. There's going to be all these different little subjects that I'm going to build out.
And what do you mean by anti-ghosting? I want to see if it means the same thing for me.
It's ghosting in business, right? You got ghosted.
Yes, okay.
So same kind of thing. Build out the anti-ghosting protocol for how you should be doing that. Not ready to go into it yet?
Okay, but here's my thought.
Okay.
Because we have a lot of clients that will ghost us, and candidates too. But I would love to talk to you more about maybe somehow working together on that as a resource for my candidates as they're interviewing on their own, where they don't have a client or a recruiter to control the process as much, then they get ghosted. I just did a whole radio tour on this.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we should talk.
Yeah, we should absolutely talk.
Yeah.
So how do we get access? When are the courses going to be available? Because I'm all over that.
Yep.
And how do we get to them?
So the first one's going to be a Lunch and Learn course. It's going to drop within the next month.
Okay.
And then you can go to my website. There's a courses tab up there. It'll take you to a Kajabi store. Boom, you're right there.
Okay.
But it's not up yet. It's got to be within the next month. It'll be all recorded, edited, and done.
I love that so much. Yeah. I am so excited to have these conversations with you and just to learn more about, and I love that you've got that psychology background, so it gives it a little different framework because you know a little bit more about what's triggering people and about how to deal with those triggers when they're triggered. It's just fascinating to me. If I could, this is not true, but at one point, I really thought I was going to major in psychology, and I really wish, knowing what I know now about being aligned in a career, I can see that I was always, like the fact that I'm doing NLP certification, that I got coaching certification, that I'm doing all that now, because it just doesn't make sense for me to go back to school for 4 years to get another degree. But I think it would have served me well to have stuck with my dream.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Everything happens for a reason. I'm still using everything I've learned along the way, but now I'm sad I have FOMO.
Don't have FOMO.
I want a psychology degree. So, oh my goodness, this has been so much fun today. Are you ready for our VIP questions?
Yes, hit me.
Are you going to negotiate with me on them?
No, not at all. This is your show.
I usually get some negotiations with the first one, so that's
Okay.
why I asked that. All right. If you were chosen to be one of the first colonists on Mars, what
Yep.
3 things or people would you take with you?
Yeah, family. I mean, hands down, my 2 kiddos and my wife.
Well,
Hands down.
that's convenient
Yeah.
that you have
It
2
worked
kids.
out really nicely. I planned for this question years
Long
ago.
time ago.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's funny because nobody's ever asked me that question back.
Well, what is it? I would love to hear.
Now you're putting me on the spot. I put myself
You
on the
shouldn't
spot.
have let
I know. I would have to have some kind of device that has books on it.
Ooh.
Like so many books.
It's like the world's biggest Kindle.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would have to have books. And it would have to be a Kindle because I'd have to have a way to highlight
Yeah.
and refer back to and index and all that kind of stuff because I am that nerdy when I read books.
Same.
This is going to be crazy. I would take my violin.
You play the violin?
I'm learning.
That's amazing. I mean, it's a very lonely instrument, I feel like, so it would suit you well on Mars by yourself.
Yeah. And the reason I'm learning is because that was, as I was reading up on NLP, that was one of the suggestions to help strengthen your neural pathways was to learn an instrument. And they recommended the violin. And now I know why.
Yeah.
That is a very hard instrument to play.
Yeah. There's like no frets or anything.
There's no
like,
frets
at all.
It is so hard to get the right tune, to get the right, note. But I'm learning. I'm not going to give up. And I'm going to negotiate with myself. I would take my 2 fur babies.
Okay. All right.
They're little.
They can fit in a container, right?
Yeah,
Like a
yeah. They can
single
fit in
container.
one. Yes.
There you go.
So I would take my fur babies, Raina and Joy,
There you go.
because I love them so much.
That's neat.
Okay. My second question. What's one thing you do each day to set your day up for success?
So we talked about journaling a little bit. I go in and my buddy Robert Hunt taught me this. He talked about the 20-mile day. Are you familiar with this?
No.
So there were 2. I'm going to butcher this story, man. All right.
We won't tell
I'm going
Robert.
to try. Yeah. Cliff Notes version. There were 2 teams that were setting out to go to the North Pole. And one of them said, we're going to drive as hard and as fast as we possibly can and just get there. Just beat the trail up and go as hard and as fast as we can. Kick up as much dust. The other one said, we're doing 20 miles a day, no matter what. And so on the good days, they would do their 20 miles and they would rest. Mm-hmm. On the rough days, they'd do their 20 miles and then they'd rest. And they did that all the way through. These guys made it. They were the first ones to make it to the North Pole. The other ones died. Many of them died, and then they had to go back. I don't know if this is myth or story, but had to go back, and eventually that guy came back like 3 years and hit the North Pole. But a bunch of them died on the process. So in the morning, what I'll do is I'll line out my day, and then I'll star out the things that are my 20-mile day, is what they call it. And so I'm going to go this far. I'm not going to go any further. Otherwise, you have like an endless scrolling thing of to-do list. I'm going to go this far, and if I do this, I'm happy. And everything else doesn't make the list.
That's really good.
Isn't that cool?
I may add that to my morning routine because and the reason I say that is because I am the world's worst about saying, I'll just do one more thing. I'll just tackle one more thing. I'll just tackle one more thing. And then before you know it, it's 10 o'clock at night and you haven't bathed.
Yep. And stuff pops up in the middle of the day. And so you'll be like, oh, well, I'll just add that to the bottom, or I'll just do that at 2.
I need a stopping point.
It's nice.
So that I can have time to practice my violin.
There you go.
Yes.
For Mars.
For Mars. And that's probably where everybody wants to send me when they hear me playing. I'm sure my neighbors hate me right now because it's, but I'm getting there. One of these days, I'll be good. Just practice. Okay. My final question.
Okay.
So if your life's work was being summarized in a news article, what would the headline be?
Business and psychology meet the quiet man story.
Ooh. See, that would make me want to read that article.
Good.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, tell everybody how they find you, how they get in touch with you.
Yeah, so you can do LinkedIn, obviously. Find me out on there. Chase McTaggart, Quiet Man Negotiations. That's one way to do it. You can go to the website, www.quietmannegotiations.com. That's negotiations with an S at the end.
And I want to give a big shout out to Maria Gutierrez.
Oh, man.
with MB Group for making this introduction. She is an amazing young lady. They do phenomenal work over there at MB Group, and just in all the other connections. Robert Hunt too.
Yeah,
that's another one. So
yeah, great connectors, those people.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation, and I can't wait to have more of these with you in the future. Have you come to a lunch and learn for us at VIP? That's going to be awesome. But for now, I just have one last thing to say to you.
Yep.
You are a VIP.
Oh, thank you.
And that's a wrap for today. Join us next week here on the We Are VIP podcast. We'd love to know how we can help you be a VIP. To find out more, log on to wearevip.com.